Okay, it's 3 o'clock. The meeting will come to order. We do have a quorum. All 5 members of the committee are present, as is town manager Nicole Brian. First item is to approve the minutes of our March 26th meeting. I looked at them and didn't see any problem with them, and there's no really more detailed than notes I took. Other questions about the minutes?
I like them.
Okay, we prepared to vote to accept them. All in favor?
I'm gonna abstain since I wasn't here.
And I'm going to abstain since I wasn't here.
Okay, so it's 3-0.
Actually, it was.
You came in,
I was
yes,
gonna say,
the
yeah, I
second
came
half.
in late. Which was noted in the minutes. Thank you.
I didn't have the time, so I just.
Discuss. Select board budget review.
So I think last night went fairly well. There were some questions and I do have some additional information for you based on those. So your packet had a bunch of information on winter maintenance because we were gonna discuss Post Road. But the feedback from the board was that they wanted to keep doing Post Road. They were happy with that.
Emphatically happy with that.
So if everyone's comfortable, you can take that packet of all this information, we can put it to the side. There was some questions, I think the main question was, Public Works Health Benefits Reserve. So what I did was, and I'm gonna pass this around. This is the spreadsheet I used when, to calculate that.
We got it. Oh,
It was not, I just did this today to address.
Thank you.
And you'll see it's actually 104, but I used 101. So based on what plans folks are actually taking or not taking or receiving the stipend, you know, so because we have the retirement, we have the life insurance, we have health insurance, we have the HRA. And so what you do see is that for the position we've yet to fill, I still budgeted for the family plan for that position. So that's where I arrived at the 101. Now, if you add in the benefits on the winter overtime, all the benefits should be at 104,
Okay.
but I didn't want to do the 104 because I mean, I see, so part of the reason we're so under budget this year is because we don't have, you can see the benefits for that one person that we haven't had hired is almost 40,000. If you follow that one across. Because part of the question is why are we at the percentage spent this year? Or the amount spent this year compared to why am I, you know, budgeting 101?
So in the health insurance for that fourth laborer, the 275 is the family plan?
Yep.
Cost of family plan, okay.
And I don't know if I made it up or it's accurate, but is so by having that person still being advertised for, and somebody could come in next
Mhm.
week and say, I want it,
Mhm.
that's covered.
Yes,
If they don't show up, then the part-time people use up that money.
I mean, they're not gonna use up that full amount and they wouldn't be using the benefit. So like if I have part-timers and I get, say in September, I get someone for full-time, I would still have the budget to hire them in that September moving forward because the part-timers would be ending with the start of a full-timer.
So are the parts, we have two part-timers for cemetery work.
Grounds work, yep.
in May and June and whatever. Are those the part-timers we're talking about, or are there part-timers for the plowing?
Both. So we're currently, last year we hired 2 part-timers for, I'll say, the summer season. They took a small break and then we brought them back in the fall to help with fall stuff. And then we hired an on-call person to help this past winter. And then we have, well, I'll say 2 on-call people.
So the budget,
So there's budget here, because we budgeted for a full-time, there's budget available for those part-timers. So what you saw in the other budget is if I wasn't gonna do post road and hire the 5th person, I was budgeting for the part-time summer help and the on-call plow. So we haven't necessarily budgeted for those separately before because we've have a budget for a full-time person that we haven't been able to fill.
So if we can't find this mythical 5th person,
We do what we did this past year.
then we'll be, have some on-call
Yep, we'll do on-calls and
Drivers.
part-times.
and some part-time people. And that still will come in at less than the cost of a full-time person with benefits and the family plan.
Correct.
If I understand correctly. And what's left over then would go into the public works reserve.
So what I do at the end of the year is we look and see what unexpended budget departments are gonna have, and we discuss what makes sense to go to the undesignated and what makes sense to go to the reserve.
So that's a discussion that we'll have
Yeah,
before the end of the year. We make a recommendation to the select board, and the select board either stamps it or.
yeah,
says
and
we
they've been
want
pretty
something
good, so I think for the most part, we've been kind of doing a 50-50 split with the departments, except I think last year we went heavily to the fire reserve opposed to undesignated because they're had an equipment purchase or so, and if we really want money to go into the undesignated, then we could do less to the reserves. It's been a good way to help supplement the reserves. And it encourages folks to, if there's money left over, we can get some money into your reserve for some of those other bigger items. So I think that was one question last night, was the amount that was budgeted for the public works, health benefits line. So I'm happy to just, if we want to reduce that, I just wanted to, this is how kind of arrived at that number. And the other question was revenue. And so looking at our rec software in 2024, last year, we brought in $10,575 to go towards the summer camp that happened last summer. And then in FY25, we brought in another $450 that happened in the summer camp that happened last summer. To date, we have brought in $20,000. for the summer camp that is planned for this summer.
And that introduced some confusion where the revenue is coming in
Right,
one year, but being spent the next year.
Right, and so
Or vice
we
versa.
talked with the auditor and what he had us do last year is we basically took in the revenues and if it was a registration for a camp week that was happening the next year, he had us actually move it to the following year, just like if we received payment or monies or expense stuff this year, but it was for last year, he'll account it to that year. So, but everything comes in through our rec software, and then Kelly has to go through the system and import it into the Trio software, which is what gives you these reports. So,
Now, the rec software. Tell me, what is that?
so we get, a few years ago, we started, I think it's called MyRec. It's a software program that a lot of rec departments use for online registrations.
So this is just something that,
So folks will go through that to do online, program registrations and they can pay online. Because before we used to be completely paper-based, and that was one of the biggest complaints that we had from folks was paper registrations and payments.
so someone can go online to this software and register
Mhm.
and pay for participation in a rec program.
Yep.
And how do they find out about that?
It's right on our website.
Is
So,
it-
yeah, and so when we send out, program notices, it tells people how to
So it goes
register.
through starts from the Vodenham
Website.
page. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then we have to go into that site, so, staff are working on reconciling this to the Trio, so where we can get Trio updated, with the new revenue. But it all has to be uploaded, so of the $10,144 that was received in 2024, $7,607 was moved into this year because the camp actually took place in July. So they kind of looked at what week the camp was for those registrations. But in all, last year's summer program brought in nearly, actually just over $11,000. So we had planned for full enrollment, I think we were planning 13,000. And we made 11,000. This year, we are at, I think Jason mentioned last night, we have 3 spots left. Enrollments.
and there are more spots.
This year, yes, yeah. So,
I think you said 81 out of 84
Are full. and so far, we have 20, that we've collected 20,000 for this upcoming summer's art camp. So those were the 2 questions budget-wise last night. Otherwise, the board was, I'll say they were supportive of the budget. I don't think anyone's ever happy with the budget, but you know.
And you're right, no one's ever happy. Good budget.
But there wasn't any, I think those were the 2 things that were mentioned was, could we lower the amount for, public works benefits? And wanted to verify that we were getting the revenue for summer camp.
And was it a discussion about what could we do to help pay for the school taxes and,
Yeah,
but
that's
much you can
undesignated
do.
fund, which,
it's just digging a hole.
so I have more information for you when we get there.
Okay,
So I was hoping if, you know, I guess the goal of day where last night went well, just to, get a final budget that the committee wants to approve and get the committee's recommendations on budget items for the warrant. If the committee's,
So there was one other item, which was, they wanted to know a number for the Pratt Road.
right, and
And
I don't have that, and that's gonna be. I'll talk to Public Works to get an idea of how many yards they use every time they do that, or how long it goes.
so what I picked up from that, I thought, was that the town trucks can't do that. Because the road's too narrow, they can't turn around.
Well, we're currently doing it with our smaller truck. We're using the 550 or 5500 is doing that road.
Oh,
Yes.
so then what's the issue?
Well, so. It's a section of road that's been discontinued, but a public easement remains. About 10 years ago, the town did not used to maintain it. About 10 years ago, the town started maintaining it. The advice I got from legal was that it really, if we're going to maintain it, it should be with a town meeting approval. Because a public easement exists, we can maintain it, but we should have a town meeting approval to do so. So we've been doing it, but there hasn't been a town meeting approval to do it.
But I thought from the approval was Bill Post and Wendy Cunningham. And it was 90 yards of gravel, or I thought it was maybe the length of this room or something, so that I didn't know we were talking about 2/10 of a mile.
Right, and we're not talking about rebuilding it, the question is for just winter maintenance, so, I mean, I can get an idea from our current plower, like, how many yards of sand and how long does it take you, so I think Pratt is just under a mile. So if you add public Pratt Road and that private section of Pratt Road together, we're about a mile together. So Pratt Road, I'm gonna say is 0.8, and then you add the private section of Pratt Road, it's 0.2.
The private section being the, northernmost
Yes,
part.
yeah,
And that's separate and distinct then from that whole section before you get to Dingley Road.
correct.
So if we've been doing it for 10 years, we don't have to worry about a budget number then, because it's been part of our budget for 10 years, right?
Right. Like I said, I'll see if what I can come up with. I'm thinking like, for Public Works to go down that extra distance and turn around, and it's probably maybe an extra half an hour because they drive slow. I need to talk to the driver and to Public Works to get an idea of what maintaining that additional section of road entails.
But we're doing it
We
already.
are, yes.
And so we're using up sand and we're using up gravel, and we're using up time. There's not going to be any increase.
Correct.
So what's the issue?
I just want to know how much it's cost to do it.
But
Whether to continue
Maybe
doing
sort
it or
of
not
now.
continue doing
Right,
it,
like
I
to
think.
get it, like, do we want to continue spending an extra 2 yards of sand every 3 hours on this road? Because it's hard to say, it's like, how often are they doing a pass on that road? So if a storm lasts, like, you can't even say how many passes per storm, because if it's an 8-hour storm, they might be going out there 3 times. If it's a 2-day storm,
But that's no different from any other road in town.
correct.
So I'm still confused about what the issue is.
I think the select board just wanted to know the cost of that section they were already maintaining and whether they want to continue to maintain it.
there's no issue about continuing though, right?
Well, if we're going to continue, it should be approved at town meeting.
Sure.
So there's a proposed question for the warrant. For it. And I think Alan wanted to add an estimated dollar value.
Right.
Okay, but we're already maintaining,
Mhm.
as George has stated, the money's already built into the budget. So is it just a curiosity
I think so.
question?
I think it's just a curiosity question.
How much it costs? I mean, if we stop doing it, there used to be a couple of houses. like that.
Yeah, I think there's 3, possibly 4 houses, which is, I think, why the town started doing it. The residents there said, hey, will you plow for us? And it is a public easement, so we can. So they started. And so we've been learning new road issues and we've been trying to address them
Yes.
as they come up. So this is one that's come up and it'd be nice to just clean it up and
But it's not gonna impact the budget.
no, so with Post Road, we're currently maintaining 53.24 miles. And I'd have to see if that, so realistically, Pratt Road though is 0.2. So,
0.2 plus 0.8
well, no, because the 0.8 section is town road.
of the 0.8, the 0.8's already
Town road, yes.
town road.
So we're just going an extra,
2/10.
Yeah.
Okay,
so realistically, it's like 53.44 miles that we're maintaining. So, could we look at what our budget was and then divide it out by the miles and get a cost per section? Yes. Is that cost per section going to change every year?
yes,
Yes.
depending on the weather.
Right. So I mean, that's really, like, I can take the miles. Divide out the winter maintenance cost for those years. And I believe that's a section we typically limit salt use on the dirt roads. So,
Well, the alternative, if we don't maintain it, would be for the residents there to pay for that 2/10 themselves,
they'd have to hire someone to do that.
right?
Yeah.
Or could we work out something where they pay the town?
I'd have to look into that possibly. I don't know, I don't think we can be private, I don't think we can be hired as private contractors for folks. But if we could, I mean, we could be like, someone needs something fixed, we could be renting out Public Works to do some work. But I'd have to look into that. My gut says probably not.
Be interesting. It's just a curiosity, but our appraiser. I don't know if it's still done, but it used to be people on gravel roads had a 20% discount on either the lot or something because of the dust in the summer. Going in and the mud in the mud season, and so there was. The access was part of if the town is giving them the benefit of plowing them, that's giving some value to those houses and if that was taken away, I would think there would be a difference in assessment, or if it was added, but I don't think, since we're already doing it I didn't realize we were already doing it. If we weren't, we were going to take it on, then I would think their tax basis would go up because of extra services being provided, but we're already doing it.
But the thing is that when we only have been doing it about 10 years or so.
I think it probably started in 2015,
Okay.
14, 15.
But was any difference in assessed value for the properties done at that time?
We haven't had a reevaluation in quite some time.
That maybe have to be looked at perhaps. Whenever we have the reval.
It's supposed to be happening next year.
they would pick up on it then, and if it seemed to be more valuable because the town was doing with the plowing, it would
pay for itself.
be part of the tax base.
Right. We cover some of the costs.
Yeah,
So we've been plowing a mile of this track road for
Yeah, so Pratt Road
10
and
years.
yes, but it's only the non-public road. The private road in which has a public easement is 210,
The last
Yeah,
2/10,
yeah.
the northern 2/10.
right?
Now, the Wilderness Road comes in, which is a private road,
Mm-hmm,
comes in off the post road and goes up into there.
mm-hmm.
Is that at the very end, or is that at the end of the 8/10?
No, the public road goes a little bit further than that.
Okay, so the public road extends further than where the Wilderness
Yeah.
Road comes in.
Not much, but it's a little bit further than that.
But at the present time, there's no financial issues on the table with regard to this, because we've been doing it for 10 years. By understanding this correctly.
But it sounds like,
things are getting simpler and simpler.
Have we beat this one enough?
I'm just surprised that they made a point of wanting to know what the money was.
Okay. What's next, Nicole?
So I guess the question I really have for you is, I mean, is the committee ready to, is there any final changes the committee wants to make to the budget? Is the committee ready to approve a budget and make their recommendations?
I have a question for you. So you passed out this same employees and so forth, the first form you gave us. And there seems to be over here now a figure of 104,591. Does that affect what we go back and change in the public works budget right now?
I mean,
Should we?
so I guess where folks already think it's budgeted too high, I wouldn't increase it.
You've got that full-time employee coming on at some point. Not there yet.
Okay,
Got 'em, and it's a family plan, so there's a lot of assumptions in the 104 figure.
And that
Okay.
104 figure, I mean, that's,
yeah, so
That's
so
like
we're gonna leave the
2,500.
101,920 on.
because part of that too is, I mean, that's assumption, that's also like, are we really doing all that overtime? That's what the benefit cost is on those overtime hours, which
Okay,
we may be well below or
This is basically
not.
worst case scenario.
no, just trying to get a feel for what folks are working for overtime.
okay, so we're gonna stay with the figure that was in the budget last night, the 101.
Unless you would like to see it reduced. That was what was, I think, 2 board members were comfortable where it was. 1 board member was just asked. That thought that it seemed high, so I just wanted to share with you all where I arrived to it.
It was higher than previous years, right?
No, I mean, so last year we budgeted 10,
We went back to actual,
right. So right now at actuals, but that's,
we're not finished the year yet.
we haven't, where is public works in this? You think I'd remember the order of my departments by now?
Page 4. At the bottom.
Thank you. All right, so Public Works currently, so at page 5 at the top, out of the 108 that was budgeted, they've expended 24.6. So as you can see on this, the total benefits that are being budgeted for that fifth person are nearly 40,000. And I think the other thing that's impacts this is the HRA. Because some folks are more apt to go to doctors than not, but it, depending on what happens, one good hospital bill can impact that pretty quickly. So, because I have budgeted fully for the HRAs. So there is a big difference between the 24 that's been spent and the 101 that's budgeted. But now you can kind of see where that's coming from.
That's just that question, I guess.
I did think that Alan's comment last night, that we have those figures at the first of the year, what people are choosing for
And they do.
healthcare, yeah.
When they get the renewal, it's on the bottom. It says the number of employees in each
Uh-huh.
plan.
Okay.
And I think. I don't know if you all got the full copy or if I just gave you the MMA insurance information. But it's just, and that's where I was trying to explain that it's, our benefits include more than just the health insurance.
So where I think we're at here is, based on the discussion that we've had previously and what happened at the select board last night, do we think there are any changes necessary to the budget that has been put together?
Does the budget include the undesignated fund?
No, I think
That's separate?
that's a separate discussion that I'd like us to have.
You need a motion?
Do you want to have that discussion before or after we approve the budget?
Well, I think use of undesignated fund, I'd like to keep separate from the budget.
Okay,
Because it shows up as a separate line item. Any use of undesignated fund.
so it wouldn't reduce the budget.
I wouldn't put it to reduce our budget, but it would reduce the tax commitment.
Okay. That's beyond me, but that's okay. Are there any changes you'd like to make to the budget? You presented it, so I assume not.
No, I mean, do we learn new things every day?
Yeah.
Yes, but I think we can, work with the budget that we've put together and move forward with it.
I mean, at some point, gotta draw the line and say, this is it. So. We'd entertain a motion to, approve the budget as it's been previously presented.
I move that.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you.
All right, do we want to do recommendations? So on the warrant, we have finance committee recommendations. Now, if the committee is comfortable, and I'll leave that up to you. I can, if you've all voted for the budget, I can put that the committee recommends the budget article. Or if there's any of you that said, I voted for it, but I don't necessarily recommend it, we can take those separately. Because what you see on the warrant is you'll see each department separately, and you'll see each of the non-municipal requests separately. And then we also, I need your approval of the revenues. And then the other item that it involves finances for your is the request for the solar project, because that's requesting use of undesignated fund.
And my gut is that this way, sorry, as the select board, they left out, they're not endorsing the solar, but they're endorsing everything else, is that correct?
I don't know, so they previously approved putting the solar project on the warrant. The select board hasn't always, their recommendation and their vote to put something on the warrant haven't been the same, a lot of times like. They'll as a board agree to put it on the warrant, but they might have different feelings on whether they recommend it to pass, and so that's really the question.
It's a question of saying, we don't want to make this decision. We
Right.
think the citizens should make the decision
Right, right,
at the town meeting.
So I know in the past, we've said, okay, if you're voting to put it on the warrant, we're saying you recommend it, but there's been some questions where folks are like, I'll put it on the warrant, but I don't necessarily want to make a recommendation. So when it comes to the finance committee, you should have recommendations. Good, bad, or abstained, on financial articles.
Right.
So
Well,
are you comfortable in saying that you recommend this budget, or is there in stuff you want to?
We've all just voted. If that's what we think the budget should be.
And you would assume we wouldn't have any further recommendations,
Correct.
but I think we need to take a nickel out of some line item.
I'm posing the question. I don't want to assume something and then get in trouble. Because so this budget includes the non-municipal organizations. Everyone's comfortable with recommending all of those.
as listed.
Yes,
Yeah. We
Okay,
voted for
yes,
them, we debated them.
Yeah, I'll go with yes, but I'm concerned about Thetford housing. Have to look at what they did again, but I'll go with yes.
we'll go with yes, okay? And then the other, what else is? Capital reserves are all in here.
All those and organizations get voted on at the town meeting, right?
Separately, and they each have a separate recommendation.
Right,
So I'll say the library and the historical society are under our community. Under general services. All the other ones.
Right.
Are separate articles in which. If you would like a different recommendation, you could have that. Okay,
I think we already discussed it.
I'm just. Asking.
I think
Pretty minor.
we're all in agreement on the budget.
So
Yeah.
everyone's comfortable with me saying under all of these warrant articles that you've approved this budget and you recommend it to pass?
Yes.
Okay. And there's nothing you wanna have a different recommendation on? That's great, I just asking.
Okay,
Revenues,
so
any changes to the proposed or estimated revenues?
that's a tough.
well, it's still a wild card. I mean, this whole issue of tariffs and automobiles and, you know, automobile excise tax is our second largest source of revenue. And it changes hourly.
Are we comfortable with the revenues, or do we wanna make any changes before approval? And
I would, personally, I wouldn't know what to change.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all up in the air, so. Go with what we've got.
As long as we feel it's a reasonable estimate.
Well, yeah, it's as reasonable as we think. We didn't pick super high numbers, we picked super low numbers. We picked numbers that we thought made sense.
Yep.
Which I think is the best we can do right now.
Yeah, can we word a motion in that way that we accept the revenue estimates as estimates for the budget for this next year? This
Are the
really anybody's guess.
New estimates part of the budget?
Yeah, so one of the questions is, because the question, like, if you approve these estimates, one of the questions is, does the town meeting want to apply the estimated revenues to offset the funds that need to be raised for taxes? It's that one, there's that one revenue question. So what is not really part of the budget approval is the state funding, right? That all comes up when we do the tax commitment. So that's why when you see on the warrant, you see the total non-property tax revenue. And then we have estimates for the other ones, but those really happen in the tax commitment. So do we, a motion to approve
The revenue estimate,
the estimated, the revenue?
I think if we
Budget.
put that word estimated in, I think that makes it sensible.
okay, I'm certainly not opposed to doing that, okay, so we would entertain a motion to approve the estimated. The
Revenue budget.
Estimated revenue budget as presented. Did I get that right? There's a motion to do that,
Yes.
thank you, Nina, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff, all in favor? I will,
And you would all recommend applying the estimated revenues towards offsetting property tax commitment?
But also, we agree with it.
No changes, okay, good. Any last,
Party.
None abandoned the town.
right, so then I'll let.
take us to the fund balance discussion.
And then I also want to give everyone hearing this.
We had some,
Excuse me, though, the question about solar, have we gotten to that yet, or,
We have not,
Okay,
that's
great.
part of the, I think, fund balance.
okay,
There's the grant. Cash balance. These are the cash balance. Sheet for this one.
somewhere. Too much paper.
So this one,
Is that the,
undesignated fund,
yes. I don't know, which one is it?
One of these.
and it has I don't know if having the 11 by 17 attached, helpful or not. But it should be in the. I think. Yes, it's in the back of that one. Oh, I see yours. So this is the package for this meeting, so. There you are.
That's debt service.
Yep, it goes with this one. So you want this? This is just because we're talking debt service.
Oh,
So then behind that one should have been the individual. Yes. All right. It should be in the other.
There's too many others.
Yeah,
I tried. It's the other pile.
I was doing it dry here.
So one of the questions on the, we're not proposing any bonds for this
Correct.
year,
this is good, this is good.
no bonds. Right now, we do have an article for town meeting for, spending $100,000 out of the undesignated fund to put a solar system on the fire station.
So just looking at this sheet, your current estimate for the fund balance. Undesignated fund balance is $1,728,000. Yeah, there's been a proposal made that we should, for this solar project. We should pay for that by taking 100,000 out of the undesignated balance. Has that been approved by the select board or?
So a few meetings ago, they did approve putting it on the warrant.
Hmm.
Okay, that's
So
nuanced.
could we make a motion ourselves that if the solar project is approved by the town, that we would suggest that 100,000 comes from the unassigned fund balance and undesignated fund balance?
Well, I guess, or just, does the. Yeah, I mean, so on the warrant article, we'd have a recommendation, so I guess the question, that would the finance committee support recommending? Or recommend supporting the solar project, which includes paying for it out of the undesignated fund?
That's a different question though.
Yeah,
So. I'm still wondering whether there's going to be, I haven't heard recent rumors about dropping, recycling, dropping recreation, but it could come up at town meeting. If that sort of thing came up to try to reduce the burden of the school issue of 400,000, I'd prefer that they drop the solar than that they drop the department. So I'm to let that if it comes out that I'm recommending the solar. That's what I'd rather just leave it up to the town to go whatever way they want, if they're. Then. For me to say
Right, I
that
agree
it's
with you.
better to do the solar and drop recycling. It's not, I mean, that's. So I just don't know how to phrase
No, I
that.
agree with you. I don't want to have us come out saying that we would approve using $100,000 for the solar. As if we approve for the solar. It's if the solar project is approved by the town, then we could recommend that 100,000 be used out of the estimated, the undesignated fund.
Why can't that be one statement in the warrant?
It does, in the warrant, it's one question. So it's a two-part question, because the first part of the question is, does the town authorize the select board to enter a contract for a solar system at the fire station? And secondly,
$100,000.
in the second part is to authorize use of 100,000 from the undesignated fund for the project. So it's a two-part question,
Two-part
because we
question.
can't approve the project without the funding.
Right.
Now, if the project is approved, but then they don't approve the
Funding,
taking it from the undesignated.
then it's dead.
Well, that's why it's
Or is
one,
it, or would it be a bond?
well, so it's one question on the warrant.
One question. We put a solar system on the firehouse and we pay for it by taking 100,000 out of the undesignated fund balance.
That's the only choice.
That's what's been prepared for the warrant right now.
I mean, we could. If we want, do we even want to propose using a bond or another way to pay for it? So that was how it's currently worded for that.
Okay, now I
Because
guess,
I don't think there was no support in borrowing money to be able to do the project.
no support on the select board.
Correct.
I don't know, I personally know enough about this project, I mean, other than, quote, we want to put solar panels on the firehouse. I mean, do we know? Somewhere we must have gotten an estimate from somebody who did it, or somebody that says I can do it for $100,000. Do we know what the estimated payback for that is?
Yeah, we have all that information.
Okay,
So the proposal I gave you originally was for 108,000, and we asked them for a reduced
okay,
amount, and we do have the project information with what it's gonna produce and all of that.
and we are dealing with revision,
No, Main Solar Solutions.
main solar solution.
So you, as the select board phrase, so are they? So that it will say, above the thing. Select board approves with the vote. Or it could be blank.
Well, yeah, I mean, so what it has the question, then there's an explanation, this system is expected to generate half the energy that the town uses. And I think we're expected to save, I wanna say 4,300 a year, with I wanna say 111 for the life of the system at 25 years.
4,300 per year. Savings. It's not much for that kind of
But
investment.
I'm not. But I think they take out something for the first year for costs,
Well, you've got the potential tax,
and we haven't figured that in.
right?
So if we were to get the rebate. Basically it's a direct pay. We'd be getting $30,000 back. I haven't accounted for that in the revenue because. Not sure where the program is, but if it's not accounted for in the revenue, then it can go directly at the end if we receive it at the end of the year, it goes to undesignated. So it'd go into miscellaneous revenue, so. We could be getting $30,000 back into the undesignated as long as the federal program is still in place.
So wouldn't the warrant say that the town approved the solar panel on the firehouse at a cost not to exceed $100,000? And then the second question is, does the town approve paying for it out of the undesignated funds? And either one of them doesn't know, then it's dead, right?
There's gonna be one question with both of those in it, I think, one sentence.
Well, I thought you said it couldn't be.
No, I have them under one warrant article, so it's a two-part question under
Okay.
one warrant article.
Yeah,
Because if
Okay.
to your point, if they don't approve one or the other, then it's dead, so it's kind of do you wanna do a project?
using undesignated
Undesignated
funds,
fund.
no more than $100,000 for solar panels on the fire.
Yes.
Got it.
And then there's an explanation that's about as long as the warrant article.
And am I right in thinking that the select board doesn't want to recommend it either way?
I'm not sure. I think that was one of the discussions at one point is not doing a recommendation. I can't answer for them. You know, they may do a recommendation, they may not do a recommendation,
But they do that when they review the warrant, right?
correct? So,
So we-
and last night they saw a draft warrant that did have that question on and. So I'll say. This committee was more receptive to the solar project. Than the select board was originally. I think the select board then was more of like, well, we'll put it forward for folks to.
The town to vote on it, yeah.
So,
It's to think that, I'm probably making it too complex in my head, but I'm just worried about talk about dropping the department and wishing that if if that was going to come up, that the solar be postponed a year rather than having a department.
How would it come up in the town meeting? Just when you're going through the budget and someone says, well, I think we should drop this department
Or cut the budget.
or cut the budget.
It's department by department, so
Oh, that's right.
it could be.
But someone could, they could not pass this, so I guess that's just because it's the warrant article. Deals with undesignated funds, the committee can make a or if you don't wanna make a recommendation, it's, we put.
Okay, let's. Starting to get myself confused here. The whole issue of the $400,000 that you're talking about, George. That's the estimated increase in the SAD budget. And so that $400,000 appears in the general services budget.
No, we don't show the school's budget,
We help show the school budget on the warrant.
correct? Though the school budget gets voted on at their May budget meeting, and then the towns have to go vote the referendum to approve the budget that was voted at the budget meeting.
Okay, so
But
the
based on,
SAD does their thing and they say, here's the budget and here's Bodenham's share of it.
we just know based on the budget that they're looking at, working with, that it would mean a $400,000 increase to the town of Bodine.
Okay.
So the
But-
question
but
is,
when we have to raise that $400,000,
no,
well, we gotta pay them for it.
right, so that happens on the commitment, just like the county. So like the county sends us the bill and says, here's your bill and it's due by this date. The school says, here's your bill and it's due by this date. So if the school budget passes the budget meeting and the towns vote at the referendum to accept the budget or pass the budget, however those are written, that's the budget and we get the bill.
Okay,
But that's
but we have to pay the bill.
correct.
And where in our budget is the money to pay that bill?
So when we do the tax commitment, we put in our budget, the county budget, the school budget.
Okay, so that doesn't happen until we get to the tax commitment.
Right, so yeah, so the town's opportunity to vote on the school's budget is through the school budget process.
Okay.
Once it passes their budget and it goes to referendum and it passes a referendum, that is our budget. The town it doesn't go to town meeting to see if the town wants to raise and appropriate it. You made that decision the day before when you voted at the referendum.
So this whole discussion about finding an extra $400,000 is irrelevant.
Well, it's based on the assumption that
We're gonna see. an
we're gonna
increase.
see a $400,000 increase, yes.
And we could be seeing an increase from the county as well.
Right.
And I did pose the question saying, based on your budget, what would we be looking at for an increase? And I haven't got a response yet to what that would be. So, yeah, at county, we don't see school or county at town meeting. What we see is the town's budget and we have a flat budget.
Correct.
And there's knowing. Because we've been more. Because the select board is going to the school and to the county. We know ahead of time this now, instead of later in this thing, that this is gonna happen. And there's some rumbling where. We should drop recreation and drop. Recycling as a way of compensating for the increase.
So, okay, so. Well, the way that would happen was at the town meeting, someone would amend the recreation budget
Right.
from whatever the hundred and whatever thousand it is to zero.
Right.
And that would just eliminate the entire recreation program. That's how we would, quote, save that chunk of money.
Right.
And then if they would theoretically do that with any other department.
Right,
And then, you know, the burden's on Nicole to try and figure out how to make the numbers work in the best that we have been left.
When does the town know? The people of the town know this $400,000 increase.
So the school's budget vote is in middle May, I wanna say 15th or 18th.
Okay, but
And I
when-
can put that,
I just wondering when does the town know that because the school budget passed, this is how much the Boldenham? Because they're gonna, if we present a flat budget,
Mhm.
most of them are gonna say, oh, great, my taxes aren't going up. So somehow,
so once the school budget passes, we'll know what passed. So there's. People can go to the school budget, so they don't know what the school budget is until it passes their
Right,
school
but
budget
I'm just
meeting.
saying. Rather than get surprised when I get my tax bill and say, wait a minute, the town passed a flat budget, why am I, you know? How do we educate them to the fact that the town budget is flat? So your taxes to the town are not changing, basically, plus the commitment changes and all that stuff. But,
And that's what we've been trying to explain to folks, like your tax bill is your town budget, your county budget, and your school budget.
right,
and,
So,
It's broken out.
and because we did that last year, and our budget was flat
right,
for the town last year, and it went up. It's
Right.
When the tax bill, that's why they're more sensitized to knowing the same thing's gonna happen this
I just
year.
think we need to educate someone. I don't know how.
I think they're educated, I just think the
I know.
issue is,
They are.
how do different people respond to that? So, and that's what I'm. The three easiest things would be the two departments and the solar, so between them, there's 400,000.
but
Right.
so we're not appropriating, the solar is coming out of
I
undesignated,
know,
So that doesn't affect the budget,
so, right.
but
that doesn't affect the budget.
our budget it does,
No,
but it affects our tax bills.
No,
no, because it's undesignated funds.
it's
Oh,
money that's already
It's
been.
money that's in the bank.
right, but I'm, at one point, I was suggesting that we could take some of the undesignated, but as a one shot, and then the thing came from the state, saying that the state funds are
Yeah, in the limbo.
in limbo, and we really, we'd be foolish not to have some emergency backup to keep things going for a couple of months till things happen.
Well, and I think that's what the board discussed last night is, does it make, because we were talking about, do we pay off the debt, right? That'd save us in the long term. But if you want the biggest short-term bang, it would be to take the money from undesignated just to put it to offset the tax commitment, right? You're automatically gonna drop the tax commitment by 200,000. But that's a one-time deal and you're.
And it doesn't go away, because that amount of money that the school is asking for this year is gonna be more next year, so now you're gonna have to pick up this year and next year. Unless you're gonna continue dumping money in.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if we paid off
Very
the,
slippery slope.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if we paid off the debt, we'd save
Right.
on the debt service, we wouldn't save as much. But once it's paid, it's off, and I'd say with paying off the debt, if the issue is just the state needing time to release money, you can wait and pay off the debt after the state's release funds. But if the issue is whether or not the state's going to even fund the schools, that's a very different conversation. So, you know. If we don't know what's happening, would we wanna pay off the debt in July? No, we'd wanna keep that. That funding available for cash flow, and then once we're getting our state funding and resources, then we could. Pay off that debt.
What does it take to pay off that debt?
So, I did talk to the bank, it looks like,
The question is, who approves that?
so
Does that have to go to the town?
it would, any funding from undesignated fund needs town meeting approval.
They have to have a special town meeting.
So it could be done at this
It
time.
could be done at this town meeting. So, I mean, to pay off,
It could be, but we don't want to. We might want to in August.
I mean, could the town approve it and we have an explanation saying that we're not going to do it until the state appropriates and sends us funding?
Yeah.
So it's not gonna happen in July. I think part of the concern is there just a delay in us getting our funding? Or is there going to be
You're not
a
gonna get
new
it.
funding plan in which it's going to change dramatically? Right, so to pay off one of our bonds is, we need to appropriate 200,000 from undesignated. To pay off the other bond, we need 300,000 from undesignated. To pay off, that one would save us 48,000 a year for the next, and that's why I gave you the big sheet.
No.
Yeah, the 200,000 pays off the Mound Brook Stream crossing, which is 20,500 a year. That last payment on that is FY 37. If we paid, if for the $300,000 loan, we'd be paying off the roads 22, which is 48,700 a year, and that is expected to, the last payment for that is in FY 33.
And I was going to advocate for that. Those, what with the 48,000 impossible. If the. But. Getting this thing from MMA. Putting everything in jeopardy, it just seems like.
So we'll know, I think it says in what, June, whether they have the signatures. So by town meeting, we would know. If we're waiting till, if they get the signatures, it's gonna go to November ballot. Right, so if they don't get the signatures, it doesn't go to November ballot.
Good.
So I mean, at least by town meeting,
No, it's
we would
the-
know whether it's on hold until November or later.
it's
I got
the-
lost in that discussion, the signatures on the bill.
So right now, it's a petition to. On a bill, so. They need to collect enough signatures on that petition for it to go to the November ballot.
And what's the petition about?
To, for the, funding bill for the state's funding. For the state's, one of their budget bills.
The MMA thing,
Oh, yeah, shoot, I didn't bring that.
That's.
So if it
It's
goes to
scary.
November,
No, I read it.
if it goes to November and fails. We would get the funding after that. If it goes to November and passes. There'd need to be a new budget. At the state level, so that's kind of the,
Let's hope.
you know,
Okay, so. Bringing the discussion back, we've been talking about the undesignated fund balance. And, we discussed the solar project, and now we're trying to figure out. We're talking about how much more we might be able to take out of the undesignated fund balance, is really what the discussion has been. And what we're learning through this MMA memo and what's happening politically is that the whole issue of state funding is kind of up in the air right now. So what that suggests to me is we really don't want to try and take anything from the undesignated fund balance. Because we may very well need that money to keep our operation going through the fall. Getting this right, Nicole? I mean, that's the implication of.
right, and I mean, if it's, I mean, you see our bank account statements, and our cash balance, so, you know. how long, and I think we're carrying a fair amount of cash above and beyond our undesignated. Right? So
Well,
our cash flow, it's all in the same account. It's designated funds for specific purposes.
but it's in the same
It's in
piggy
the
bank.
same piggy bank.
So the question becomes, given that we have all this extra money in our piggy bank,
Well,
can we justify running the undesignated fund balance below the current policy?
and if it wasn't for this, what if the state budget doesn't pass, right? I think that's a bigger. And I'll also add that we're carrying funds that are allocated for projects that are happening, right? We're in the middle of the waterfront project, we're in the middle of the town hall project. We're currently holding the funds for the fire truck, the $750,000. Once we get that fire truck this fall/winter, that money's going, so there's, 2.5 million of projects of money in our bank account now that we know we're going to be expending on projects in the next 4 to 6 months.
Nicole,
So
how
that's
much-
gonna-
How much are we earning on that account right now?
4%.
But, and fixed, that's variable, right?
No, we negotiated with Androscoggin for 4% on our savings account. The checking account is a lower rate, so we hold the majority of our funding in our savings account.
Pretty good fixed rate.
Because,
Yeah, but I think it's a money market though. I don't think it's a CD or anything,
no, it's our savings account, yeah.
but that's a rate that the bank can change.
No,
They haven't, I say, so we had more money with Camden, because Camden gave us the 4%, Camden's, and so that's when we negotiated with Androscoggin to get the 4%. Camden's rate did change. So we moved the majority of the money back over to Androscoggin.
Mhm.
And rates are going up, not down, so I hope that Androscoggin's been holding that 4% for a while. On that account for us. They want us to keep our money with them.
Yeah, but it isn't fixed.
No,
Okay. That's what I mean.
I mean,
It is a good rate.
right, but how long a commitment do they make for that?
it's
Right.
been at that rate for. I wanna say at least a year.
But they can unilaterally change it.
They have
We
to
don't-
give
I'm
advance
sure they can.
notice or,
I'm sure they can, but they,
Well, when they're earning less than 4% on it, our rate will change.
yes,
because I think, like, we didn't have a 4% rate, they gave us that rate, so we can move our money back to them.
Right, no, I understand that.
So while it's a fixed rate, it doesn't change every day or monthly. Can they change it if they wanted to? I'm sure they could, and
And at that point, then we go back to Camden or whoever and we say,
But-
let's have a conversation.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, but it will be changing for all the banks if we get into that environment.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about getting rid of the 3.75 one.
And that's the higher one, that's the one, that's the one I would like to pay off.
So right now, we're earning more money on that, but we have this, that would free up 48, almost 49,000 a year.
So it'd be nice to do, it's just the timing is not ideal, so maybe, given the uncertainty around the state budget, we put a hold on it and just let's look at it for next year. Because I know that's kind of, the board left last night with kind of, we don't really want to be using undesignated at this time, not knowing what's gonna happen at the state level.
So,
I
so
mean-
it can only be changed at a town meeting. You can only vote it, so in other words, if we don't make this recommendation this year, then we have to wait till next June to make it.
So that's why I just don't like,
I
could we
feel
make
that
it,
we're better off this year with what is happening globally and so forth to be prudent and not pay it off. And see what, if there's any need for those monies in case of some other funding that we've planned for falls through.
I would agree with that, Meg.
So that would be my argument. Is that it is imprudent at this time.
Well, I don't like it, I agree.
And I think that's what the select board came to last night, and what I came to. Why I'm not advocating, I'd love to see the. Knowing that in the next 7 years, there's an extra 50,000 that we don't have to come up to find to pay off, so, but. But so it leads back to the last. So back to the solar.
So we're back to solar, and would this committee want to recommend any? So we've talked about the loan, and I'm hoping we can revisit that next year when we're in. Maybe next year's stuff will go better in terms, so we're back to the solar, but the other possible use of undesignated is to offset the tax commitment. And I think we've all, I mean, I've heard it's a one-time use, and
It's slippery slope.
yeah,
And it'll bite us again, it'll bite us next year, so, because.
just kind of delays it.
Everybody go up and vote against the school budget.
Amen.
Really, seriously,
I'm serious.
yeah,
And we can certainly advocate for that ahead of time, after. Let them go back and reduce their budget.
exactly.
And I think they've heard some. I think there is some thought that there's somehow there's some re-looking at it, right, from that point.
I know, I mean. I'll have to see if, what their next. Budget looks like. I'll follow up and just see where they're at and if there's been any changes in their last, rounds. But last I heard is we were looking at, a 400,000 increase. Are they still working on their budget process? I don't know if they have a final number yet. But they do their budget vote mid-May, so I'm assuming they're gonna have to have a final budget here within the next couple weeks.
One of the main things which they don't have control over is the money comes from the state depending on students. And we've lost students.
Exactly.
So there's less money coming in, but we haven't lost so many that we can drop teachers. And that's prescribed. You can't have a class smaller than this or bigger than this.
Mhm.
They're trapped. So it's not like they don't. So, that's the things that are out of their control too.
Well, I think there's other state laws that have come into effect that they're addressing that, like there's certain minimum payments for. Pay rates for ed techs and so forth, so I think, they're having to implement. Things that have other state laws that have come into effect too, so I am not an expert of the school budget, I am not involved in their process, so I really can't answer those, I just, I'm sure they're dealing with many factors and I don't have the details on those.
Pretty cool. You have to do this, but we're not paying for it. That's
I mean,
what
I
it's
guess
all
the
about,
hope
right?
is, it'd be great if the state would, one of the biggest complaints I think that the state has and the bills that they get are for property tax relief. The biggest thing the state could do for property tax relief is fund a bigger portion of the schools.
One thing is that the administrative costs are outrageous. The Los Angeles School District is larger than the state of Maine. They have one administration for the whole thing. a lot more students, obviously. But even so, it's one administrative unit. And to have as many administrative units as we have in this state is, we're paying through the nose for administrative costs.
That's because we believe in local control.
I mean,
A little too low.
Yes.
I mean, the city of Los Angeles probably has as many people as the state of Maine. Look at all our separate towns.
Probably 5 times as many as.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
No, they have about, what, 3 million, I think, or 3 million.
So I
Twice the
understand,
state
yeah.
population,
Hi.
but it's a huge school district.
Yeah.
Okay, so. We've been discussing the fund balance and what we should or shouldn't do with it. And we're gonna put the solar project on the warrant. And my sense is that given the overall uncertainty of the times we're living in right now, there's not a great deal of interest in trying to use some of that money to pay off a bond or do something else with it. Is that the general sense of things?
It is.
Steve?
Yeah.
So how do you all feel about the solar project?
Well, I was just trying to go back, I found it.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
In my book there, the
I think the payoff for the solar project is, I mean, it's
11 years.
immediately saving money,
Mhm.
and it'll save money for years and years and years and years, so that's a good use of the money.
Okay, it'd take up to 11 years for the project to be cash.
So,
Yes.
So let me ask you a different way. So that from the time that the solar project is finished and in production, we're going to be saving $4,300 a year for energy costs that we're paying out right now.
It says, so the system is estimated to make half of our power.
And our power is,
A lot. But it's all, but it's also distribution, so I'd have to go back and pull that apart.
And the other thing is that's at the current kilowatt per hour rate. So if the kilowatt hour rate goes up next year, then you're saving more. Every year the kilowatt goes up, cost of a kilowatt goes up, you're saving more and more money.
I
So
look at it
I
a different
put solar
way.
panels on our house and I expected I'd never see I'd never see the
That's
payback.
right, you told us this, yeah.
But because of the way the electricity rates have gone. The payback, I think, for us is gonna be around 7 or 8 years.
What it has been for us. We put it in, I
So,
think, 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago now.
so coming back to our money earning 4%. 100,000 earning 4,300 at the current estimate is a 4.3% return on our money. Sounds like a deal.
I'm in favor of things that are gonna lower our budget in the future, because there's stuff that increases every year, so what can we decrease to help offset those increases?
We did.
Paying off a bond or solar would do those things.
So
The
it sounds
streetlights
to me as if we're still coming back to the wording on the question. That we don't want to necessarily influence the town vote on whether we approve the solar. But these monies are available if the town does approve the solar project.
Or is that, would the committee not like to make a recommendation?
I would personally make a recommendation, but I also have a question is, how does the rebate figure in?
I didn't figure it in because
Right,
so if we wanted to figure it in, we could add it to the revenue, but then it's going to, when it accounts for the revenue, it's just offsetting. So if we don't account for it and we get it, it goes into miscellaneous revenue when we get it.
right,
And whatever we over collect goes to the undesignated. So unless we wanted to word the question, if we get rebate, then we want it to go back into undesignated, but that's the, you know, when we over collect revenues, it goes to undesignated. So if we were to get it, it would make its way back into undesignated.
And maybe that should be pointed out though, because that is part of the decision.
Right,
Well, and it's a federal program.
right.
Yeah.
I don't want folks, you know. We have 100, we may get a rebate that may
And I
mean that
think
our
that's-
cost is gonna get it's gonna be a 70,000 system.
And I think the town just needs to know, we may get,
Right, so we can say we may get one, but we're approving 100,000.
Yeah,
Like, are you
that's-
comfortable with this project at $100,000? It may
Right.
turn out to be 70,
right,
but are you comfortable with it at 100? Because that 30,000 rebate is not guaranteed.
But it would be good information.
I just, yeah, I hear what you're saying. My concern is I just, you know, to get into the discussion of the federal and whether we're gonna get it or.
Yeah,
It gets pretty complicated
Well,
when
yeah,
you
but-
think about town meeting.
Right.
Well,
there'll be an
Exactly.
educational piece on this.
I'd rather not count on it.
Well, I
And there'll be
think,
discussion and there's an opportunity to have some education around that.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's all a guess, but we know that the cost, if we don't get any rebates, the cost is going to be no
Mhm.
greater than $100,000.
Exactly.
Now, there's a real strong possibility, or we don't know because of the political stuff. You know, it could be up to $30,000 rebate for putting it in.
So the question, I mean, but we already feel that it's a good
Yeah,
deal
even
at 100,000.
and I will say, so I know the Community Development Advisory Committee is very supportive of the project and is planning on doing some educational materials and outreach.
good.
Okay,
I try to minimize that when it comes to the warrant.
It'll come out as the discussion.
So my sense is that we want it on the warrant and that we support it. Is that correct?
Correct for me.
yes.
Yes.
So is the committee comfortable taking a vote to support that one article? So typically on the,
moved.
okay, and it would be worded that the committee, finance committee recommends ought to pass is usually the wording, so just want, if that affects anyone's.
So we're all in agreement that we're supporting the solar project on the firehouse roof for a cost not to exceed $100,000 to be taken from the undesignated fund balance.
Yes.
I'll say, Nina made the motion.
I did make a motion.
Yep.
Yes.
Is that Jeff?
Good.
And I'll say, I'll take everyone's nods and yeses as. Anyone doesn't like that, speak now. Okay,
Are there other issues with regard to the undesignated fund balance that we need to discuss, or have we beat that one hard?
I don't think the select board would. From what I heard last night, I don't think I think they will just hold what's there or whatever might show up.
but it's something I think we should definitely relook at next year. We'll look at it again next year.
The coalition of fund balance. Yeah. Agreed. Is there any other business that we need to discuss?
You have a meeting, your next meeting is scheduled for April 23rd. It was scheduled for then because that's after the board's April 22nd meeting.
Does that take the place of the 28th? Wasn't it the 28th?
The 30. So April 9th, April 23rd, May 14th, or 21st. So I just, so that we were gonna have a meeting in case there's any, because we were gonna present the budget to the select board at the 22nd. But there wasn't any changes from the budget based on the last meeting. Do you wanna just? We'll put a placeholder, and that way if there's any surprises at the select board's 22nd meeting, we can meet on the 23rd, but if there's no surprises, then we can just wait and meet on the 14th.
Go a month till the next meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we want to wait until after the school makes their budget recommendation. The following.
So that'd be the 21st.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my suggestion would be that we all just pencil in the 23rd on our calendars.
Right.
And we have the option of canceling it if we don't really have any business at that point in time. But if things are coming up that we need to address, then we'll be able to address them.
We probably wouldn't know until the 22nd. board meeting.
Well, and that's what I was saying, if people wanna just put it on their calendars, and
Yeah,
something gets brought up on the 22nd, we can meet the 23rd, but if the board approves the budget and there's no changes, then we'll cancel the 23rd.
Correct.
And then we'll plan on, do we wanna plan on the next meeting being the 14th or 21st?
Well, the school is going to okay their budget at what?
I'll have to verify that, I think it might be the. I think it it's a Wednesday meeting.
so it might be that 14th.
It might be, so my only concern with the 21st is. The town hall committee might be meeting that day. So what I can do is I can verify the school meeting. And the town hall committee meeting. And that it sounds like this committee would prefer to meet on the 21st.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, we're talking May 21st.
So we're gonna plan on April 23rd, and if
And you're gonna hope to get an email from me that morning saying, no need to meet, see you on the 21st.
right,
Okay.
Or you may get an email saying.
you better come in early.
Because once we get to the May, that's when by then I'll have much better handle on. Under your budgets. So the 20th, like later in May is better.
Good.
And that's why if this committee prefers the 21st, I'll see if I had town hall committee slated for the 21st, I'll see if I can switch them to the 14th or something.
May 21st, that is after the SAD.
I'm pretty sure, I'm gonna double check when their meeting is.
Okay,
I think we have it on the town website.
probably.
We have been getting questions, so we can find that information.
Does anyone have any other business? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Votes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you all.